Starlight Glimmer. Enforced equality. So, this is an interesting troublemaker. First off, she is epic, but not a villain. Second off, she's the first epic from Equestrian Odysseys block, and the only one in Equestrian Odysseys itself, which meant for a very brief period of time, we had epic troublemakers, but no villains in block. That was quickly changed due to Trixie, who we already saw. But yeah, so let's talk about Starlight Glimmer. She is perhaps the single most unique epic in the game. So, so her ability makes her both easier and harder to farm depending on how you're playing. If you're playing orange mid-range farming, right, with Applejack or Mod, you don't want this card. 2 versus 6 is not typically where you want to start out. Especially since, you've just got better options, right? For the 6th mark, and it's not a villain, so you can't frighten things and so on and so forth. So Starlight Glimmer, not for orange, right? So, but there are other colors. There are other colors that want to use epics, right? So, do you want to use her in control? Well, probably not, because she's not a villain, right? Now, you might want to use her in blue-purple, because you can use zeroed out to find her, and then use her in niche situations, like just run one copy of her and then tutor her up and play her that way. But even then, that's a pretty niche situation. You wouldn't want to rely on her as one of your troublemakers because she's not a villain and she offers 2 points, and that's pretty risky for something that doesn't have the villain keyword, at least as far as control is concerned. And most aggro decks, most of their cards are 2 power or less anyway, so she's just not going to be useful in that situation, right? So, not a mid-range card, not a control card. What does that make her? She's an aggro card. I am not kidding. This is an aggro epic. And not only is she an aggro epic, like, she's a good one. And I'm honestly surprised that we don't see her used in more aggro decks. And honestly, I think we will see her used more frequently in aggro decks post the rules change. So, okay, why is she an aggro card, right? You're probably asking yourself, why is this an aggro card? Okay, well, first off, she's not a villain. She doesn't frighten your stuff. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? There's no villain on here, so she doesn't frighten your stuff. But why does that make her aggro? It's because you can play a bunch of cards to her and then uncover her and immediately challenge her and get 2 points, right? Very low risk. Now, like I said, Applejack doesn't want to use her because Applejack wants to beat up villains by herself. But that's not going to be true in your aggro deck. You're going to want to play a lot of characters and then beat up Starlight Glimmer, and you're just fine, right? So, okay, but what's the other reason? Like, just that isn't enough. We have Nightmare Star, and Nightmare Star I don't think is an aggro card. It's because Starlight Glimmer makes aggro decks easier to beat her, right? Aggro decks usually don't have anything that's 3 or more power, so it won't ever shrink anything except your main, maybe 1 or 2 other cards, and the competitive stuff like Nightglider or whatever. But most of the time it's going to either do nothing to your friends because they're already 2 power, or raise their power. Stuff like the 101 entry, or Peewee, or Aloe, or Rarity Breezy. Rarity Breezy is really, really good with this card. Get better and make it easier to beat Starlight Glimmer. While you play her to a place, where they've got a whole bunch, or against aggro, or blah, blah, blah. You play her to a problem that has a few control cards, right? They're going to shrink. Right? So it makes it easier for you to fight, while control and mid-range, harder for them to fight. So, yeah, like this is actually a really strong aggro card, and I only know of a few people who run her in aggro decks. So, what else is there to her? Well, you don't have to strictly use her in aggro. You could use her in some control decks where you use stuff like, where you actually care about the number 2. Not on the list and downright dangerous both affect cards that are at precisely 2 power. And or less, 2 or lower. But Glimmer brings them up to precisely 2, so that's something you can take advantage of. But that's kind of a niche usage, in my opinion. It's fun. It's definitely cute, but not really not really what I think needs to be done in a control deck, usually, right? Like I said, if you're going to be using troublemakers, you want them to either have 0 bonus, a really, really powerful ability, or be a villain, right? Which it counts as being a really powerful ability. So yeah, Starlight Glimmer, Enforced Equality, the aggro epic. With the new rules, I highly suggest that you consider running her in your aggro decks, especially if you're already running Rarity Breezy, which most white aggro decks are right now. She is a way to accelerate your points with very low risk. Chances are you'll be able to beat her. Plus, she interferes with orange. You can just drop her to where orange is set up to try and beat troublemakers, and suddenly they're at 2 versus 6, which is not where they want to be. Now, sure, they have their extra flips and so on and so forth, and they'll probably get through her eventually, but at the right timing, you can just slow them down huge amount. And like I said, if you're playing aggro, chances are you could beat it easier than the orange player. So, yeah. There you go. Anyway, I think that's about all I've got to say about this version of Starlight. I'm sure someone's going to suggest more Starlights in the near future once the next set comes out, which, this week. So, yeah, that is Starlight Glimmer Enforced Equality. Thank you, King Utopia. Next on the list is a really old critter. And he had his time in the sun, but no one seems to be playing with him anymore. I am talking, of course, about the one, the only, Eagle. Not Falcon. Eagle. Well, see you later, guys. Bye.